The stars had always seemed friendly to Kevin Shaw. For 30 years, ever since humanity first met alien life, he had believed that the universe was a place where different species could learn to live together. He had built his whole life around this idea. As Admiral of Earth's diplomatic fleet, he had shaken hands with creatures that had no hands. He had smiled at beings that did not understand smiles. He had apologized for things that were not his fault, simply to keep the peace. Kevin was 62 years old now. His hair had turned gray, and his face carried the lines of a man who had spent decades trying to make friends in a galaxy that did not always want friendship. But he still believed. He still hoped. Every night, before he slept, he told himself that patience would pay off. One day, humanity would earn its place among the great powers of the galaxy. Then the Valkyrie came to New Geneva. New Geneva was a small colony on the edge of human space. About 2.3 million people lived there. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers. They had built schools and hospitals. They had planted gardens in alien soil. They had made a home far from Earth. The Valkyrie Dominion was one of the older powers in the galaxy. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They had conquered many worlds. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered. When they looked at humanity, they saw a weak species that talked too much and fought too little. The Valkyrie decided that New Geneva belonged to them. The planet sat in a region of space that both species claimed. For years, diplomats had been talking about how to share the area. The talks were slow, but they were peaceful. Everyone thought there was still time to find an answer. Ambassador Linda Cho led the human team. She was 55 years old, a small woman with kind eyes and a soft voice. She had spent her whole career building bridges between species. She believed that every problem could be solved with enough patience and enough understanding. When the Valkyrie fleet appeared above New Geneva, Linda immediately called for a meeting. She brought gifts, as was the human custom. She brought translators to make sure there would be no misunderstandings. She brought an open heart and a hopeful smile. The Valkyrie brought warships, 40 of them. They surrounded the planet like wolves around a wounded deer. Linda tried to reach their commander, Lord Casix. She sent message after message. She offered compromises. She offered concessions. She offered everything she could think of. Lord Casix did not answer. The bombardment began at dawn, local time. The Valkyrie ships fired on the cities first. Plasma weapons turned buildings into ash. Missiles destroyed power plants and water treatment facilities. In the first hour, 500,000 people died. On the ground, people ran for shelters that did not exist. Parents carried children through streets filled with fire. Teachers tried to lead students to safety, but there was no safety to be found. Nathan Cole's sister, Margaret, was one of those teachers. She worked at a school for refugee children from Earth's overcrowded cities. When the attack began, she gathered her students in the basement of the school building. She told them stories to keep them calm. She told them help was coming. Help did not come. The second wave of attacks targeted anything still standing. Hospitals were destroyed while doctors tried to save the wounded. Emergency shelters were bombed while families huddled inside. The Valkyrie did not care who they killed. To them, humans were not really people. Humans were just animals that had learned to talk. Linda Cho made one final attempt. She flew her small shuttle toward the Valkyrie flagship. She broadcast on every channel. Her voice was shaking, but she kept trying. "Please," she said, "we can talk about this. Whatever you want, we can discuss it. There is no need for this violence. Please, just tell us what you want." Lord Casix finally responded. Not with words, but with weapons. A single blast from the flagship destroyed Linda's shuttle in an instant. A relay drone, hidden in the debris field, captured everything. It recorded Linda's last words. It recorded the flash of light that ended her life. It recorded Lord Cassix's voice as he spoke to his crew. "The humans are like well-trained pets who forgot their place," he said. He was laughing. "Now they will remember." The massacre lasted 6 hours. When it was over, New Geneva was a graveyard. Of the 2.3 million people who had lived there, less than 10,000 survived. They hid in caves and tunnels, too afraid to come out even after the Valkyrie left. The footage reached Earth within a week. Government officials watched it first, then military commanders, then the public. Everyone saw what had happened. Everyone heard Linda's last words. Everyone heard Lord Cassix's laughing duck. Kevin Shaw watched the footage 17 times. Each time, he paused on Linda's face in her final moment. He saw the confusion in her eyes. He saw the desperate hope that diplomacy might still work. He saw her die believing that kindness could save her. It did not save her. It had never been going to save her. President Marcus Day called an emergency meeting of the United Nations. The chamber was packed. Every nation on Earth was represented. Every face was grim. Marcus stood at the podium. He was a tall man, usually cheerful, known for his optimism. But there was no cheerfulness in him now. There was no optimism. There was only cold, hard anger. "For 30 years," he said, "we have been courteous. We have been patient. We have believed that kindness would be repaid with kindness. We thought that if we showed respect, we would receive respect in return." He paused. The chamber was silent. We were wrong. He looked at the faces before him. He saw grief. He saw rage. He saw the same thing he felt in his own heart. "They killed 2.3 million of our people," he continued. "They bombed our schools. They destroyed our hospitals. They murdered our children. And when our ambassador begged for peace, they killed her too. They laughed while they did it. They called us pets." His voice changed. It became harder, colder. "No more," he said. "No more courtesy. No more patience. No more hoping that they will learn to see us as equals. From this moment forward, humanity will demand respect. And if respect is not given freely, we will take it." The chamber erupted in applause. But Kevin Shaw did not clap. He sat in silence, staring at nothing, thinking about Linda Cho and her kind eyes and her soft voice and her desperate, hopeless faith in the goodness of others. That faith had died with her above New Geneva. Now something else was being born. Something harder. Something darker. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. And Kevin knew, in the deepest part of his soul, that nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months passed after the massacre at New Geneva. The galaxy watched and waited. Every species expected humanity to do something foolish. They expected a small, angry fleet to attack the Valkyrie and be destroyed. They expected humans to scream and threaten and then be crushed like insects. That was what happened to weak species that forgot their place. But humanity did, something no one expected. They went quiet. Human diplomatic channels closed. Human trade ships stopped flying between worlds. Human colonies reduced their communications to simple, coded messages. The ambassadors who had once filled the halls of galactic power simply disappeared. It was as if the entire species had crawled into a hole to die. The Valkyrie Dominion laughed at this. Lord Cassix told his people that the humans had learned their lesson. They had been punished, and now they were afraid. Soon, he said, they would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. And when they did, the Valkyrie would put them to work as servants and slaves. Other species were less certain. The Drenari, an old and cautious race, wondered if the silence meant something dangerous. But no one took them seriously. Humanity was weak. Everyone knew that. They had no real military. They had no advanced weapons. They were simply children playing in a galaxy of giants deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth. Nathan Cole worked in a facility that did not officially exist. He was 40 years old, an engineer who had spent his career building civilian technology. 6 months ago, his sister Margaret had died on New Geneva. She had been in that school basement with her students when the second wave of attacks came. Nathan had not cried when he learned of her death. He had not screamed or raged. He had simply gone to his supervisors and asked for a transfer. He wanted to work on something that mattered. He wanted to make sure that what happened to Margaret would never happen again. They gave him Project Prometheus. The project was humanity's secret answer to the massacre. In hidden facilities across Earth and in dark corners of the solar system, scientists and engineers were building weapons. Not the polite, defensive systems humanity had shown the galaxy. Real weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that would make the Velthari wish they had never heard of Earth. Nathan's job was the engine. Human ships were slow compared to other species. They used old technology that the galactic community had sold them at high prices. But Nathan and his team had discovered something new. A way to fold space that no other species had thought possible. A way to move so fast that enemies would not see the attack coming until it was already over. Dr. Samantha Gray was Nathan's chief physicist. She was 35 years old, brilliant and focused. Her husband had been on one of the diplomatic shuttles that the Velthari destroyed. She had not taken a single day off since his death. "The new drive works," she told Nathan one morning. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but her voice was steady. "We tested it last night on the prototype. It exceeded every expectation." "How fast?" Nathan asked. "Fast enough that we can jump inside their defensive lines. They will not even know we are there until we start firing." Nathan nodded slowly. He should have felt happy. This was what they had been working toward. But happiness seemed very far away these days. All he felt was a cold, hard satisfaction. Like a man sharpening a knife before a hunt. Across Earth, similar scenes played out in secret facilities. In orbital shipyards hidden behind the moon, new vessels took shape. They were not pretty ships. They were not elegant or graceful. They were brutal, ugly things with thick armor and heavy weapons. They looked like what they were. Machines built for killing. General Patricia Dunn oversaw the construction. She was 58 years old, a career soldier who had spent most of her life frustrated by humanity's peaceful approach to the galaxy. She had argued for years that Earth needed a real military, a real defense force. No one had listened. They were listening now. Patricia walked through the shipyard, inspecting the vessels one by one. 500 ships. It was not a large fleet by galactic standards. The Velthari had thousands of warships. Other major powers had even more. But Patricia was not planning to fight a fair battle. Fair battles were for species that had something to prove. Humanity had nothing to prove anymore. They just had a debt to collect. Her aide, Lieutenant Carlos Vega, walked beside her. He was young, only 26, but the massacre had aged him. He had lost friends on New Geneva. "Good friends. When do we move?" he asked quietly. "When they have forgotten to be afraid of us," Patricia replied. "When they are completely certain that we are broken. That is when we will remind them what humans can do." Carlos looked at the ships around them. "Will it be enough?" "It will be enough," Patricia said, "because we are not going to fight their war. We are going to fight our war. And they do not know what that means yet." On the galactic stage, life continued as normal. The Galactic Council held its regular meetings. Representatives from 100 species debated trade agreements and border disputes. Sometimes they discussed humanity, but not with any real interest. The humans were done. Everyone agreed on that. The Velthury ambassador, a tall figure named Lord Terran, gave occasional speeches about how his people had restored order to the disputed territories. He spoke of humanity as a lesson for other weak species. "This is what happens," he said, "when lesser beings forget their place." Earth's seat in the council chamber remained empty. No human representative came to object or argue or plead. The silence was absolute. Some species found this strange. The Mentari, who had always liked humans, sent private messages asking if Earth needed help. The messages were never answered. Admiral Kevin Shaw spent those 6 months in a small office at military headquarters. He was officially retired from active command, but no one had asked him to leave. Instead, they asked him to review plans, to advise on strategy, to help design the attack that everyone knew was coming. He worked long hours. He studied Velthury tactics. He examined their defenses. He looked for weaknesses that could be exploited. And every night, before he slept, he watched the footage of Linda Cho's death one more time. Not out of grief. Not anymore. Out of purpose. Linda had believed in peace. She had believed that kindness could change the galaxy. She had died still believing that. Kevin would not let her death be meaningless. He would make sure that the galaxy learned something from what the Velthury had done. The lesson would not be about peace or understanding or cooperation. Those lessons had already failed. The lesson would be much simpler. Do not touch humanity. Do not threaten humanity. Do not harm humanity. Because if you do, humanity will come for you. They will come with ships and weapons and a rage that cannot be bought or negotiated or satisfied. They will come, and they will not stop until the debt is paid in full. 6 months of silence. 6 months of preparation. 6 months of a species transforming itself from prey into predator. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what that meant. The first sign that something was wrong came from a Velthury listening post in a distant star system. The station sent routine reports every 6 hours. It had done this for decades without fail. Then, one day, the reports simply stopped. The Velthury military command sent a message asking for an update. There was no response. They sent another message. Still nothing. Finally, they sent a patrol ship to investigate. The patrol ship found debris, twisted metal and frozen bodies floating in the darkness of space. The listening post had been destroyed so quickly that no one had even sent a distress signal. Lord Cassex received this news with annoyance rather than concern. Equipment failed sometimes. Perhaps a reactor had exploded. Perhaps pirates had gotten lucky. It was not worth worrying about. Then 3 more listening. Posts went dark on the same day. Then a patrol. Fleet of 20 warships vanished without a trace. Now, Lord Cassex began to feel something he had not felt in many years: uncertainty. He ordered increased patrols along the border with human space. He told his commanders to stay alert. But he still did not believe that the humans were responsible. They were too weak, too broken, too afraid. He was wrong. Admiral Kevin Shaw stood on the bridge of the battleship, Retribution, and watched the final preparations for the attack. Around him, 500 human warships waited in the darkness between stars. Their engines were silent. Their weapons were charged. Their crews were ready. Kevin had requested command of the Retribution personally. The ship was the largest in the human fleet, but that was not why he wanted it. He wanted it because of its name, because of what he intended to do with it. Beside his command console, he had taped a photograph of Linda Cho. Not a formal portrait, but a candid shot from a diplomatic reception years ago. She was smiling in the picture, raising a glass of wine, her eyes bright with hope. He looked at that photograph now. One last time. "Admiral," his communications officer said. "All ships report ready." Kevin nodded. Open a channel to the fleet. Every crew member on every ship heard his voice. It was calm and steady, the voice of a man who had made peace with what he was about to do. 30 years ago, we made first contact with alien life. We were excited. We were hopeful. Oblem zio. We believed that the universe was full of friends we had not yet met. We tried to be kind. We tried to be patient. We tried to earn a place among the stars through courtesy and diplomacy. He paused. 6 months ago, we learned the price of that kindness. 2.3 million of our people died because we were too polite to defend ourselves. They died because we believed that others would treat us as we treated them. His voice hardened. That belief died at New Geneva. Today, we teach the galaxy a new lesson. Today, we show them what humanity becomes when we stop being courteous. He looked at Linda's photograph one more time. All ships, engage. The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Nathan Cole's engines worked exactly as designed. The ships crossed the distance to Velther Prime in less than an hour. A journey that should have taken days. They emerged from FTL, inside the Velthery defensive perimeter. The Velthery had 2,000 warships protecting their home world. It was the largest fleet they had ever assembled. They had been expecting a human attack for months, and they were certain that they were ready. They were not ready for this. Human ships appeared everywhere at once, inside the defensive lines that should have given the Velthery time to react. Before the Velthery commanders could even issue orders, human weapons began to fire. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Human ships moved in ways that seemed impossible. They accelerated and turned faster than any vessel the Velthery had ever seen. Their weapons punched through Velthery shields like they were made of paper. And they did not fight like the polite, defensive humans the galaxy had known. They fought with a fury that had been building for 6 months. Nathan Cole worked in the engine room of the Retribution. Alarms screamed around him. Warning lights flashed. The ship shook every time a weapon hit them. But Nathan kept the engines running. He kept the power flowing. Every time his hands grew tired or his vision blurred. He thought of Margaret and her students in that basement. He thought of how afraid they must have been in the final moments, and he kept working. On the bridge, Kevin directed the battle with cold efficiency. He did not rage or shout. He simply issued orders in a calm voice, moving his ships like pieces on a game board. When a Velthery cruiser tried to flank the Retribution, he ordered a counterattack that destroyed it in seconds. General Patricia Dunn commanded from the carrier Judgment, coordinating the entire fleet. Her voice filled the communication channels, guiding ships, directing fire, exploiting every weakness in the Velthery formation. Lieutenant Carlos Vega served as her tactical officer. He watched the battle on a holographic display, tracking the chaos of combat. He saw human ships die, but he also saw many more Velthery ships die. "They are breaking," he said, surprised by his own words. "General, they are actually breaking." Patricia nodded grimly. "They expected us to fight like we used to. They expected us to be careful and defensive. They did not expect us to fight like we have nothing left to lose." The Velthery flagship, Lord Cassix's personal command ship, tried to retreat when the battle turned against them. It was the largest vessel in the Velthery fleet, and its loss would be a terrible blow to their pride. Patricia saw the retreat attempt on her display. "No survivors from command vessels," she ordered. 12 human ships converged on the flagship. Lord Cassix had time to send one message before the end. It was not received as a distress call, but as a scream. "They are monsters. They are not supposed to fight like this. This is not how humans." The transmission cut off as the flagship exploded. The Battle of Velther Prime lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Velthery defensive fleet existed only as debris floating in orbit around their home world. 2,000 ships, reduced to wreckage. Humanity had lost 63 ships, less than 13% of their fleet. Every death hurt, every loss was felt. But they had won. They had not just won, they had crushed the greatest military power they had ever faced. Kevin Shaw stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at the planet below. Velthor Prime was untouched. The human fleet had not fired a single shot at civilian targets. They were not the Velthori. They did not murder helpless people, but the message was clear. They could have destroyed everything. They chose not to. This time, Kevin picked up Linda's photograph and held it gently. "It is done," he said quietly. "They know now. Everyone knows." The galaxy had just learned what happened when humanity stopped being courteous, and the lesson was only beginning. The Galactic Council met in an emergency session 3 days after the Battle of Velthor Prime. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the Great Chamber, a vast circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central stage. For centuries, this had been the place where galactic affairs were decided. Wars were ended here. Treaties were signed. The fate of civilizations was determined by votes and speeches. Today, the chamber was filled with fear. Everyone had seen the reports from Velthor Prime. Everyone knew what the humans had done. A species that the galaxy had dismissed as weak and harmless had just destroyed the greatest fleet the Velthori had ever assembled. They had done it in 4 hours. The Velthori ambassador, Lord Theron, sat in his delegation section. His gray skin was pale, and his forearms trembled slightly. He had spent years mocking humanity. He had called them pets and servants. Now 2,000 of his people's warships were debris, and humanity's fleet was still intact above his home world. "This cannot stand," he said to the representatives near him. "The council must act. The humans have committed an act of war. They must be punished." But the representatives around him did not respond with agreement. They looked away or found reasons to check their communication devices. No one wanted to talk about punishing humanity. Not anymore. The main doors of the chamber opened and silence fell. A human delegation walked in. For 6 months, Earth's seat had been empty. Now humans were back, but they did not look like the diplomats the council remembered. They did not bow or smile or apologize for being late. They walked with their backs straight and their eyes cold. Leading them was a man named Derek Tran. He was 47 years old. A former prosecutor known for his sharp mind and his complete lack of patience for lies. Before the massacre, he had worked in criminal law. After the massacre, the government had asked him to serve as Earth's new ambassador. He had accepted with one condition. He would not negotiate. Derek and his delegation did not walk to Earth's old seat in the back of the chamber. Instead, they walked directly to the center stage. This was a violation of protocol. Only the council president was supposed to stand in the center. The council president, a Drenari elder named High Speaker Malos, rose from his seat. "Ambassador Tran, this is highly irregular. Please take your aside." "No," Derek said. The word echoed through the chamber. No one had ever interrupted the High Speaker before. No one had ever simply refused a direct instruction. "I am not here to follow your procedures," Derek continued. "I am not here to negotiate or debate or ask for permission. I am here to inform you of the new reality." Lord Theron stood up, his face twisted with rage. "You cannot simply dictate terms. You have committed an act of war against the Velthori Dominion. The council will demand justice for..." "Justice?" Derek's voice cut through the interruption like a blade. "You want to talk about justice?" He turned to face the Velthori ambassador directly. 6 months ago, your people murdered 2.3 million of ours. You bombed our schools while children were still inside. You destroyed our hospitals while doctors tried to save lives. When our ambassador begged for peace, you killed her mid-sentence." Derek took a step toward Lord Theron. The Veltri ambassador stepped back without realizing he was doing it. And then your Lord Cassix laughed. He called us pets who forgot our place. He thought it was funny. Derek's voice was quiet now, but everyone in the chamber could hear him perfectly. Lord Cassix is not laughing anymore. He died screaming. His last words were that we are monsters. Do you know what I find interesting about that, Lord Theron? He paused, letting the silence stretch. Monsters are what you get when you push peaceful people too far. We did not want to become this. We were happy being kind and patient and courteous. But he taught us that kindness is weakness. You taught us that courtesy gets our people killed. He turned back to face the full chamber. So now we are something else. And you are all going to have to deal with that. A representative from the Montari Collective stood up. They were an insectoid species, known for their wisdom and their long memories. Ambassador Tran, we grieve with you for your losses. But surely you cannot simply demand that the Council accept. I can, Derek said. And I will, because we are not asking for permission. He began to list Earth's demands. His voice was calm and clear, like a judge reading a verdict. First, the Veltri Dominion will pay full reparations for every life lost at New Geneva. The exact amount will be calculated based on human standards of compensation. They will pay until the debt is settled, however long that takes. Lord Theron opened his mouth to object, but no words came out. Second, the Veltri will surrender every colony in the disputed territories. Those worlds now belong to humanity. Any Veltri who remain there will live under human law. Third, Lord Cassix has already been killed. However, every officer who participated in the New Geneva massacre will be extradited to human custody for trial. If the Veltri refuse, we will come and take them. Fourth, the Veltri Dominion will issue a public statement acknowledging that humanity is a sovereign power that is not to be threatened, attacked, or insulted. This statement will be broadcast to every world in the galaxy. Derek paused and looked around the chamber. These are not requests. These are facts. The Veltri will comply because they no longer have the power to refuse. We have destroyed their military. Their home world exists because we chose not to destroy it. If they test our patience again, we will not be so merciful. A Drenari representative rose slowly. She was old, one of the oldest beings in the chamber. Ambassador Tran, what you describe is not diplomacy. It is conquest. No, Derek said. Conquest is what the Veltri did to New Geneva. What we did was self-defense. What we are doing now is ensuring it never happens again. He looked at every face in the chamber, one by one. Let me be absolutely clear with all of you. For 30 years, humanity was kind. We asked permission for things we had every right to do. We apologized for things that were not our fault. We accepted insults and mockery because we believed that patience would earn us respect. His voice grew harder. We were fools. Respect is not earned through patience. It is earned through power. And now we have power. He took a deep breath. You wanted us to be courteous. We were, and it cost us 2.3 million lives. It cost us our innocence. It cost us our faith in the goodness of others. His final words were almost a whisper, but they carried to every corner of the chamber. So hear Earth's message to the galaxy. No more courtesy. We will defend our people. We will protect our interests. And if anyone, anywhere in this galaxy, harms human civilians again, we will not stop at their military. We will not stop until there is nothing left to threaten us. The chamber was completely silent. These are the terms, Derek said. There will be no negotiation. There will be no debate. You have 1 week to comply. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His delegation followed behind him. 100 species sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what had just happened. The humans they had known were gone. Something else had taken their place, and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Velther Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old order, where humanity was dismissed as a minor species, was gone forever. A new order had taken its place. The Velthari Dominion still existed, but only as a shadow of what it had been. They had paid the reparations, every credit of them. They had surrendered their colonies. They had made the public statement that humanity demanded. Their great fleet was gone, and they were not allowed to rebuild it. Once, they had been one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Now, they were a warning to others. Lord Cassix was dead, killed in the battle above his home world. But those who had served under him, the officers who had carried out the massacre at New Geneva, had faced human justice. Some were executed. Others were sentenced to life imprisonment on a small asteroid far from any planet. The prison was designed to keep them alive for a very long time. Humans had gotten quite good at life extension technology. Admiral Kevin Shaw had retired from active service after the war. He was 67 now, an old man who spent most of his time in a small house near the sea. Young officers sometimes visited him, wanting to hear stories about the battle, wanting to understand what it had been like to lead humanity's first real war. Kevin always showed them the same thing. He would take out the photograph of Linda Cho and tell them about the old days when humanity had been diplomatic and gentle. He would tell them about Linda's kindness, her patience, her faith in the goodness of others. He would tell them how she died. Then he would say, "This is why we fight. Not for glory, not for conquest. We fight so that no one ever thinks they can do this to us again." The young officers would leave with something in their eyes that had not been there before. Not anger, not hatred. Understanding. Nathan Cole had become one of the most important people in human military technology. His engines powered every warship in the fleet. His designs made human vessels faster and more maneuverable than anything else in the galaxy. He worked long hours and slept little, just as he had during the war. Sometimes, late at night, he thought about his sister Margaret. He wondered what she would think of what he had become. She had been a gentle person, a teacher who loved children. She would probably be sad to see him building weapons, but then he remembered how she died, trapped in a basement with her students while the world burned around them. And he would go back to work. Dr. Samantha Gray still worked beside Nathan. Her husband had died with the diplomatic fleet, and she had never remarried. She said that her work was enough. Some people whispered that she had never really gotten over his death. But Nathan knew the truth. She had gotten over it. She had simply channeled all that grief into something productive. Together, they had built a military technology program that no other species could match. The human fleet was small compared to the great powers, but ship for ship, it was the most dangerous force in the galaxy. General Patricia Dunn had become something that no human had ever been before, a member of the Galactic Security Council. She had not been invited. She had simply shown up at a meeting one day and taken an empty seat. When the other representatives protested, she had looked at them with cold eyes and asked if they wanted to discuss the matter outside. No one did. Now. 5 years later, she was the most feared voice in galactic affairs. When Patricia Dunn spoke, representatives listened. When she issued warnings, species obeyed. It was not because anyone liked her. It was because everyone remembered what humanity had done to the Velthari. Lieutenant Carlos Vega had risen through the ranks quickly. He was a captain now, commanding his own cruiser. He spent most of his time patrolling trade routes, protecting human merchant ships from pirates and hostile powers. It was not glamorous work, but it was necessary. Every time his ship appeared in a system, other vessels gave it a wide berth. Human warships had earned a reputation. No one wanted to find out if that reputation was accurate. On Earth, monuments had been built to the fallen of New Geneva. The largest stood in the capital, a wall of black stone with 2.3 million names carved into its surface. Every child on Earth learned about the massacre. They learned what had happened, why it had happened, and what humanity had done in response. The lesson was simple. Kindness was a gift, not an obligation, and gifts could be taken back. Derek Tran stood before that wall on the 5th anniversary of the massacre. Crowds had gathered to hear him speak, but he was not looking at them. He was looking at the names. Somewhere among those millions of carved letters was his cousin, who had worked in New Geneva's communications center. He had never found her name in the list. There were too many. "We did not choose to become what we are now," he said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We were made this way. We were shaped by those who mistook our patience for weakness, our courtesy for submission. They taught us that the galaxy respects only strength." He paused and touched the wall gently. "We learned, and we will never forget." Across the galaxy, the anniversary was noted by other species as well. Not with celebration, but with caution. The Montari sent a message of respect. The Drenari held a moment of silence in their council chambers. Even former enemies acknowledged the day with quiet wariness that no one laughed at humanity anymore. No one called them pets or servants. No one suggested that they should be absorbed or conquered, or taught their place. Some species mourned the loss of the old humanity. They remembered the friendly diplomats, the patient negotiators, the species that always apologized first. They wondered if the galaxy had made a terrible mistake by pushing humanity too far. Others argued that humanity had simply grown up. The universe was not a kind place. It never had been. The only reason humanity had been able to believe otherwise was that they had been protected by their distance from the galactic center. New Geneva had ended that protection forever. Kevin Shaw sometimes wondered what might have been. If diplomacy had worked. If courtesy had been returned with courtesy. If Linda Cho had lived and continued building bridges instead of dying mid-sentence. But those thoughts came late at night, when he was alone with his memories. During the day, he knew the truth. The galaxy had taught humanity a lesson written in the blood of millions. And humanity had learned it well. They were not cruel. They did not conquer or enslave. They still helped other species when they could, still traded fairly, still kept their word. But they were no longer kind to those who did not deserve it. They were no longer patient with those who mistook patience for weakness. They were no longer courteous to those who answered courtesy with violence. No more courtesy. Not ever again. The stars that had once seemed friendly still shone above Earth. But now, when humans looked up at them, they did not see friends they had not yet met. They saw a universe that had tried to destroy them and failed. They had survived. They had grown strong. And they would make certain that nothing like New Geneva ever happened again. That was the legacy of the massacre. That was what 2.3 million lives had bought. A humanity that would never again be caught unprepared. A humanity that demanded respect and received it. A humanity that remembered what it had lost and would never forget. The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity its place. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson of its own, and every species, from the oldest to the youngest, had learned it well.